Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we work at making public education advocates of all of our audience. And why do we do that? Well, we do that because public education done right means that your economic future is bright. When we don't get it right, it's not so bright. And so we want to get ahead of the game, make sure that we create our pub ed army, especially this time of year where it's legislative session time in Texas and other states around the country. And so let's make sure that I train you to better understand the need to become an advocate for public education, even if you don't have any kids of your own. What? Yes, even if you don't have any kids of your own, we need for you to understand public education, understand the need to really get enough funding for our students in public education, and how to communicate with your legislators to help us do that. As always, I ask that when you come in, you write your name in the chat, that you write comments and questions about what you're hearing, so that we can have a back and forth. Being a public ed teacher for 13 years before I became an administrator, I've been in the public ed business now for 35 years. I like to have interactive classrooms. And so help me be interactive by you interacting with me through the comment section. And if by chance you listen to this after the show's over on Sunday at 8, you can write your question and I'll get notified and I'll get your answer to you. But thank you everyone for being back. And today we have on a guest that we've had on before. And the reason why I have her on is because one of the things that I have found, besides the fact that I need to create this pub ed army, is that I need to educate parents in some of the really important milestones in their kids' public education life. And one of those milestones is understanding their child's college and career readiness expectations in high school. All states have college and career readiness expectations for their high school students. Unfortunately, most parents sort of trust the schools. They trust the high school to take care of that and to graduate their child college and career ready, whatever that means, without much interaction on the part of the families and the parents. And so that, I hope, I have shown over time, and with new people joining our audience every week, my hope is that I keep informing parents why that's a mistake if you're not interacting with your child and their school counselor and so forth, even before high school. Now today I have asked I call it our college and career readiness counselor that we've had on several times before, Miss Natasha Forge, to come on and specifically talk about this time of year, especially for our 11th and 12th graders. Does that mean if you don't have an 11th and 12th grader that you sort of mentally check out? No, because I need for you to become a recruiter for us, for not only your own children who may be younger, but also your family, extended family, your neighbor's kids. You need to help, because this is all part of that educating game of getting kids so ready for school and for college and for possibly vocational school or military future, that they then graduate from those possibilities beyond a hourly wage job. There's not a way for us to have a bright economic future if everybody is in an hourly wage job, which isn't. And so I've taken it upon myself to bring this cry to you all to say, folks, you need to help us graduate these kids to a brighter future. So without further delay, Ms. Forge, tell us a little bit about your background, just so that we can share and people can be impressed by your credentials.
Well, I've been in education for the last 21 years. I started out as a teacher, science teacher, and then, of course, just being in the classroom with the students I've noticed that some of them had, a few issues that I really couldn't help them with at the time as a teacher. So I decided to become a counselor. Um, I was a counselor for about 3 years, and then I've also been an assistant principal as well as a elementary principal. And so I came back to my passion, which is a college and career counselor. And so that's kind of like where I stand at this point.
And you've been doing that for the last several years, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In a public education setting with really majority minority kids, majority poverty backgrounds, and making sure that most of them go to either college, career, or military futures. Is that correct?
Right. Either 2-year, 4-year college, technical school, or military. Yes.
And that, talk a little bit about, for example, in Texas, what the expectations are around that.
So, well, House Bill 5 has basically mandated that all students graduate with at least 20, well, they have to have 26 credits as well as an endorsement. So one of the ways that I explain the endorsements to our students to make it easier for them is that we have a college endorsement and a career endorsement. So the career endorsement means that we offer, with the school that I'm with, we offer 3 particular pathways: public service, health, business administration, and then we also offer information technology. However, there are a plethora of different endorsements at different schools. So I explained to them that they have to take 4 credit hours within that pathway, and then they'll receive what we would consider a career endorsement. Some of our pathways have certificates associated with them, which means that they can start an entry-level job with their certificate, like they will go to a technical school or a 2-year college. Instead of getting an associate's degree, they would get a certificate. So it's the same type of certificate because they do receive it from a community college in our area. As it relates to when I explain to them about the college, they have to take 4, well, all students have to take 4 English courses in Texas anyway, but taking the 4th math, 4th science, and 4th social studies gives them a multidisciplinary endorsement, which is called a 4x4, which better prepares them to take the TSI and be enrolled in college, as well as also helping them to pass the SAT or ACT, which of course helps them get into a 4-year college or university.
So, and we've done podcasts about this before. Matter of fact, that's a favorite of mine. If I happen to be unavailable to do a podcast once or twice a year, I will oftentimes bring up that college readiness podcast that you did with Ms. Zambrano, another college readiness counselor. But today the focus is, what should parents be thinking about? Let's start with seniors, and then we'll backtrack to 11th graders as well. What should senior parents be thinking about with their kids now? We're in March. What should be on their minds that I'm afraid, because, gosh, I will tell you, I've done I've been that experimenter. That's sort of a nice way of saying it. I've been that person that will go up to a parent that I know has a high school child, and I will ask them, what is your child's endorsement in high school? I have yet to have a parent be able to answer that question. And so that is an area that is a huge deficit in our family. So let's start with seniors. What should senior parents be thinking about right now?
Actually, right now, senior parents should be thinking about the number of scholarship funds and or FAFSA making sure that they have completed the FAFSA and or TASFA, basically, for our undocumented students. The students at this time of year should have already applied to colleges. If they have not applied to colleges, then they still have the opportunity to apply for some colleges, but researching the availability, the eligibility of when the applications are due. Most 2-year colleges, such as the community colleges, they usually have an open enrollment up until when they begin, which is in August. Some students may want to start in the summer. So that's one of the main things that they want to think about, the colleges that the students are going to go to and how they're going to fund it over the next semester or 2 semesters, or even, the 2 years or 4 year time span. That's very important at this time.
The parents should have already attended at least one college readiness meeting a year in high school, right?
Yes, they should have. And it should have kind of like been a focus around like the senior year as well as the FAFSA and TASFA. And the reason why is because a lot of parents, they feel it's almost like the lunch application. They feel like, oh, I make this amount of money, so therefore I don't want to apply. But for even for students to receive scholarships, they have to apply for the FAFSA or TASFA in most cases for the scholarship to even be awarded to the students. So it doesn't just have the aspect of just trying to check to see how much money you made the previous year. It really lets other organizations know the need for the student to be able to receive funds from them as well.
So you're using a couple of terms that some people may not be familiar with, and this is where parents who have middle school kids, parents who are early high school age kids, they should be paying attention. What is FAFSA, and then the other term that you used?
TASFA. So
Yes.
FAFSA is just to kind of get, it is an acronym, but it's basically it's a free application, and so that's one of the first. That's the two letters, the free application. And I wanted to explain this too, because a lot of times there are organizations who will charge to complete the form for you, and so then they'll, some parents will end up paying and feel duped and things of that nature. But that's the whole point of it, is the free application for student aid. And so that's kind of like what it stands for. And so the web address is FAFSA, FAFSA.gov. So you have to make sure that it's .gov, not .com or .org or anything like that, because it is from the federal government that's offering the aid. Now, when they offer aid, they offer the aid in forms of grants, as well as usually the Pell Grant, or as in financial aid, which is through what we consider a loan. And so we explain to students that grants are just like scholarships. It's free money. So if they offer you a grant, yes, you want the grant. It's not an issue. If you are offered a loan and you do not want to accept the loan, then when you are enrolled in the college is going to send you an award letter. And then at that point, you will deny the loan. So we always try to make sure that parents and students understand that it's not that the federal government is going to send them the award letter. It is the school in which they have enrolled in. So not just applied to, but if are actually enrolled in, they will send the award letter to the student to say, do you want this loan or not?
So senior parents should have already filled out the FAFSA. Do they fill it out senior year, or do they actually fill it out during their 11th grade year?
They fill it out the senior year. So October 1st of every of the student's senior year. So this past October 1st, 2020, students were able to begin to complete the FAFSA. So there are two different, there's parts to it. One part is that it's called an FSA ID. That just means that it's the federal student aid ID. So the students have to receive one, and then the parents have to receive one. They do both have to have two different email addresses, one for the student and one for the parent, because there's a section that the students complete, which is the demographic information. It asks them questions about where they live, race, things of that nature. And then the parent has to go in and they have to attach their IRS taxes to the form. And so it normally just links directly from that portal to the IRS and then links back. So, but that's why the parents have to have their own portal as well.
Now, am I remembering correctly? Is it mandatory in some states that parents fill that out during high school?
As a matter of fact, it is mandatory in some states. It was due to COVID, because originally it was going to be mandatory for this 2021 school year. However, due to COVID, they have changed it. So then next year, our current juniors, all students in the state of Texas will be responsible for completing the FAFSA. The only reason that they won't complete the FAFSA is that they will be completing the TASFA. And so basically the TASFA is just like the FAFSA. However, it is for our undocumented students. So I've heard students say, well, I don't have a social security number, so I can't apply to a college. I can't apply for scholarships. I can't apply for financial aid. And that's not true. So every college I'm just going to refer to Texas at this moment, they have opportunities for our undocumented students to be able to participate in their college programs as well. And so instead of them completing the FAFSA, they will complete the TASFA. The difference is it is a paper-based form. The students will have to be enrolled in the school, and then they will send the TASFA form to the school. And so our schools have money for students, and so it's on a first come, first served basis. So what that means, and when I try to explain that to students, I tell them, go ahead, apply early. So like students should have already applied for colleges. Like I said, if they haven't, it's okay. They still have opportunity, but the money for TASFA may not be available at closer to this time of year. But don't not try. At least try, because they understand that some students are going to apply early and some students are going to apply later. So at least put in the effort to get enrolled and then see if there's funding available.
And we're not going to get into the politics of documented versus undocumented students, but what I will say is that smart families will all either fill out the FAFSA or the TASFA, because there seems to always be opportunities for most students and
Yes.
employees who are successful in our settings here in the United States. That's the only politics that I will do, because that's not our business. Our business is to educate students, and that's what we do to the best of our ability. And so it's interesting to hear how the government is sort of helping us with some of our very, very bright undocumented students who ultimately end up being an asset to our country. So again, this is one of the things that we in public ed don't do, is we don't play politics, because that is not our business. Our business is only to educate children to the best of our ability. And as you hear, that's what we strive to do all the time. Okay, so as senior parents, they should have, the FAFSA should have been filled out, or the TASFA. The kids should have already applied. Do the parents pay, or does the school pay for the college application fee?
The parents pay for the college application fee. So one of the things.
What if the parents can't afford it?
What will happen is, what happens is we are our particular school, in most schools in Texas, but not all, we are a SAT school. So we offer the SAT opposed to the ACT. Our students have the opportunity to also take the ACT on a waiver. And so what happens is majority of our students are on free or reduced lunch, which offers them a waiver for the SAT. So if they need funds for the applications for colleges, then they can use the SAT waiver to offset the cost for the applications. So one of the things that when I'm working with students, I tell them to choose at least 3 colleges that they really want to go to. And some of the things that they look for are, of course, their major and minor, student life, activities that they're interested in, and then of course the eligibility requirements. That's kind of like the first thing, but on the most part, those are the things that I have them look into to research, because it's no sense in going to a college if you want to play soccer and there's 5 other colleges out there that have soccer, and then you apply to this one school. We also encourage students to apply to more than just one school, just because you want to have opportunities. I know this particular year we have a student who received a $16,000 scholarship over 4 years for college. And so, but if she applies, if she applied other places, or if she applied somewhere else and didn't give this other school a chance, she would not have gotten the $16,000. So that's the thing. Like, I always tell them to give themselves options. But if they do have to pay for the application fee, you don't want to have to pay $85 here, $75 there, $25 there. So it's, we just try to say, kind of like hone it into about 3 solid schools that you really want to attend, so that if you have to pay the application fee, you're not having to pay so much.
And I believe you're a Title I school. Title I schools do get some waivers as far as fees, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good to know. We don't want to set up a situation where our brightest kids from poverty don't get a chance just because of that. Is it up to 75? I remember it used to be 40. Is it up to $75 now?
Some colleges, it just all depends. Each college has their own application fee.
Wow. Okay. Now, we talked about seniors, so we've given the senior parents some homework. Let's talk about if we have parents who kids are juniors right now. What should they be thinking? What should they be preparing for, because this year's almost over. We've got 6 or 7 weeks left of the school year in most districts. And then there's summer school for some kids to make up credits. This COVID year has caused us to have to work a little bit harder in catching kids up. We call it now the COVID climb. We don't want to be negative and talk about the COVID slide anymore. So we are working with kids to climb up to academic success. And so what do parents of 11th graders need to be thinking about this time of year?
At this time of the year, they need to be thinking about making sure that their students are meeting the mark of their grades. That's going to be the main focus at this time. The GPA, which is the grade point average, is going to be very important for our juniors going into their senior year, because this is the time when they can begin starting this summer to begin to apply for colleges, because some colleges, they have what we call early decision. And so they would apply for those colleges the summer before their senior year. And their GPA is going to be very important. At my particular school, we use Skyward. Other schools may use Power School or some other type of database, but parents usually always have access to their children's grades and attendance. And so that's one of the main things that I would say that they need to be focusing on. The next thing is SAT or ACT, whichever the school provides. If they're going to take the TSI, any of those college entrance exams. So those are the types of things that parents should be, making sure. Hey, have you taken the PSAT? Have you taken the SAT at least once? If not, like communicating with the school. Some schools, they charge for the SAT. Some schools, they offer it to all students. I will say for our particular school, we offer the SAT to our juniors their junior year, and then we offer it again their senior year, so that they can build upon that over the summer. So if that's something that other schools offer, then this summer the parents should also be, seeing what the students can do to help bring up their scores for that, so that they can meet eligibility requirements. One of the things I will say is that some schools are making it optional to have SAT just due to COVID, but not all schools. So you have to determine which school that the student wants to go to. Scholarships. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Scholarships is also very important. Some programs like Naviance, they have in there the National Merit Scholarships, and students can go in really at any grade level, but especially like we want the 11th and 12th graders to still be going in and applying for those. I talk with my students. I say, even if it's a scholarship Saturday or a scholarship Sunday, you and your parents sit down together and just kind of like go through the scholarship, see when the deadlines are. Some of them require essays and some of them do not. We kind of like created a solid essay for the students, and all they have to do is kind of tweak it based on the scholarship essays, whichever ones that they have to do. We try to ask them to create a general one and just kind of like pull from it so that they can have something, concrete in front of them to help them along the way.
So there's a lot that 11th grade parents, I think, need to have on their radar if they haven't started doing that up to this point. If they haven't gone to any college readiness meetings at school, and they probably were virtual and easier to go to, and still probably it didn't happen. But if they haven't been in contact with their child's college and career counselor, this would be a good time to reach out and to ask the college career counselor about their child's SAT, pre-SAT, and maybe have access to their child's, you called it Naviance, some have career cruising software, which is the software that kids have access to, oftentimes even starting as early as middle school, to go in and start not only doing career interest inventories about their likes and their possible skill areas that might turn into a major in college, but also their grades, right? You said that and credits, right? That the parents need to be paying attention to how many credits is their child on target to graduate next year as a senior without the senior scramble. Oh my goodness. We all know what the senior scramble is. Well, at least you and I do.
Right.
As that last year scramble of trying to do what should have been done the previous 2 or 3 years and packing it in, right? Taking credit recovery, doing all of those things that, frankly, in a school that's not doing its job, the counselors haven't reached out to the parents. Certainly the kids haven't been honest with their parents. The parents haven't thought to ask their kids or counselors about credits and whether they're up on the credits and whether they're going to graduate. The parents assume everything is okay. And then somehow, usually by the middle of the first semester of the senior year, the counselor has finally reached out to a parent to say, your darling is not on target to graduate at the graduation ceremony this year unless your child does this, that, and the other, right? And then the senior scramble begins. So, again, making sure that parents involve themselves in the lives of their high school parents is just imperative. And unfortunately, that tends to be when parents, we see this in the schools. We see that, they can't let go in kinder. They don't want to let go in first grade. And then they sort of let go. And then, the involvement of the parent in school with as their kids get older drops off and leads to that senior scramble because kids didn't want to be honest with themselves or their parents. Again, counselor didn't reach out, or the school principal didn't reach out in time. The teachers didn't really reach out. They're overwhelmed, especially during this COVID year, but there's no COVID grace period as far as credits, right? There's been no change. Everything is the same as far as needing the same amount of credits to graduate. Is that right?
That's correct.
What about testing and having graduation requirements for the state test? Is that waived at all?
Well, for the 2019-20 school year, any students, if they, because due to COVID, the students, if they took a course such as there's 5 ELCs, what we call them, end of course exams, that students have to take. So just to give an example, if a student was in ninth grade and they had biology, English 1, and algebra 1 on their schedule, if they passed all 3 of those courses, then their STAR ELC would be waived. But let's just say, for instance, the student was unsuccessful passing biology, but passed English and algebra 1, then this particular school year that we're in now, they would be responsible for passing that biology class, and then the other 2 courses would have been waived. So that's kind of where we are now.
So parents aren't going to remember that, but what they need to remember is if you have an 11th or 12th grader that's supposed to graduate this year or next year, you need to be asking these questions that have to do with graduation requirements, especially around the state test. So that's another homework check box that they need to remember. Now, if you could tell parents of middle school, let's just go down to middle school, what would you tell and advise parents of middle school, knowing what you know about being a college and career readiness counselor in high school and having done this and graduated several years worth of kids? What advice would you give middle school parents now?
Well, there's two bits. One of them does. I am a big fanatic of grades, and that's because sometimes in middle school, students, they may not pass a particular course, and when they don't pass the course, they may still go to the next grade level. However, when they are in high school and credits are associated with that, then students normally have to either retake the course or we have to put them in a credit recovery program to recover the credit. So it's very important to stay on top of the students' grades because the grades are now attached to credits, whereas in middle school, they're not. So that's one of the main things that I would say in that aspect. And then the other is to have conversations about what the student wants to do. Yeah, of course, all students don't know. When they're in middle school, they don't know, but start having those conversations because we have seniors sometimes that graduate that still have no idea what they want to do. They don't talk about it at home, anything of that nature. They still just kind of like, I don't know what I want to do. And when they leave us, sometimes they'll go to like a community college and try to figure it out. Sometimes they just want to go into the workforce and take off a year or things like that. But those conversations from the home, like those matter most. And most parents, well, I shouldn't say most, all parents should know their child and know their abilities. Because like some students, they have, really good book sense. And then other students have, like, they're really good with their hands. So just to kind of like help them and advocate for them and just like, let them know, okay, I know you're really good with your hands. Let's try to find some positions or, careers that you can work with your hands. Or if you're a mathematician, let's see things that, research things together. So I would say would be those conversations to get them ready and prepared for the next few years as it relates to, even if they do like math, taking some of the higher math courses that are offered opposed to just taking the lower math classes. And so and even most schools now are offering dual credit to get them in the, talk about dual credit their at least 7th and 8th grade year so that they can, want to do it in 9th grade. I'll say that some of our students have kind of like been afraid to do so because they feel like, oh, it's a college course. I'm just a freshman. I'm not going to be able to make it. But building that confidence, a lot of times it starts with conversations. You can do anything, that you put your mind to, like, let's look at it together, things like that. But having those conversations to kind of propel them to their future and give them that confidence. That's what
How do you advise parents who may not have gone to college, may not have had that experience? Because I've noticed that, well, and of course the research bears out that kids who come from college that parents have a higher rate of college going than kids who don't come from parents who went to college. So how would you advise parents who didn't go to college, maybe even didn't graduate high school, but want that for their kids? What would be good advice?
The first thing I would say is majority of the time, the schools, they have meetings. As many meetings as the school has, try to attend as many as possible. If you can't go, send a representative just to find out what offerings that they have at the school. And then, of course, meet with the school counselor. Meet with the principal if you need to. But, on the most part, meet with that counselor to say, hey, I want to know about the opportunities that you have for my child here at your school so that, I can, of course, make sure that he or she is college ready when it's time, when he or she graduates. So just meeting with the counselor. And then, of course, on the most part, like I said, they have meetings at least 2 or 3 times a year, if not more, about the organizations, the activities, the programs that they offer in the schools. And so just being involved.
And so many times we have our well-meaning parents, but they don't speak English. What do we do with them?
Many times we have there's like an interpreter on campus that kind of helps assist with those situations. I know some schools they have to where there's the Hispanic parents in one room and they have headphones, and so someone is translating. Sometimes we have it to where one person speaks and then another person translates it so that everybody in the room will be able to understand what the presentation is about.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there's really absolutely no reason for a child to graduate not understanding his or her college, military, vocational readiness opportunities through the school and with working with their own parents, if the parents involve themselves. And one of the things we didn't do a lot of talking about today, we have another podcast, and that is that most high schools now offer free college. Mm-hmm. That is tremendous. And you alluded a little bit to kids being afraid to take that. But if we can build that confidence in our kids early enough, where we tell our elementary school kids, you're going to go to 9th grade college and high school. You're going to go to, you're going to graduate with 30 hours, 60 hours of free college, because that saves me, the parent, thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
That awaits. That's the reward for a parent going through this work of reaching out to the school, reaching out to the counselor, talking to their kids. And so there are good motivating factors to do exactly what you said, and that is get with the schools, get with the counselor, and talk to your child. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, thank you, Ms. Forge. We appreciate the homework that you've left for parents, and this is for parents of all school-age children, because preparing kids for college is not something that happens as a senior. It's a work in progress from pre-K on up, right?
Right.
So thank you for being on. Thank you for reminding us about what parents should be doing this time of year. And my hope is that many parents will be taking next week to reach out to their not only kids but their counselors to start that conversation that they maybe haven't had yet. All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me today.
All right. Bye-bye. You're most welcome. All right. So we've been talking about parent involvement and making sure that our kids get paid attention to from the parents' involvement with the school as far as college readiness. And so I'm going to continue talking about how important parents are and adults are to our children. And one of the things I'm going to do, because I'm using media, and media likes to shock, so I've got some shocking data. I've got a headline here that says 60% of Americans will be obese by the year 2030. Now we're in 2021, almost halfway. If you sort of, we're going to sleep a couple times and it'll be June, right? And so we're in 2021, and so in 9 years, it says 60% of the United States is going to be obese. So let's delve into those numbers a little bit, and then talk about maybe what we can do differently so we're not one of those 60%, right? So in the United States, 42.5% of adults 20, of adults 20 and, wait a minute, in the United States, 42.5% of adults 20 and over, that was my missing piece, 20 and over are obese, while another 31.1% are overweight. So that BMI thing, it goes overweight, then obese, right? While these statistics are alarming, the American Obesity Association suggests that by 2025, 50% of Americans will be obese, and this will jump to 60% by 2030. What's behind this ongoing rise in Americans and the Americans' weight? That's the burning question, right? So it's a complex answer, and everything from endocrine and disrupting chemicals known as obesogens in the environment to chronic stress to poor sleep habits all lead to a higher fat deposition and weight gain in the human body. However, there's one big piece here. The consumption of ultra-processed or hyper-processed foods, which make up 57.9% of the American diet right now, is the important culprit. The link between processed foods and obesity has taken on new meaning during the pandemic, as even mild obesity may raise the risk of COVID-19. In fact, COVID-19 patients with mild obesity had a 2.5 times greater risk of respiratory failure and 5 times greater risk of being admitted to an ICU compared to non-obese patients, according to research from the Alma Mater University. As such, have been made to tackle the pandemic by targeting junk food. So why are processed foods a key obesity culprit? Well, the ultra-processed foods include items such as breakfast cereals, pizza, chicken nuggets, soda, chips, salty, sweet, savory snacks, packaged baked goods, microwavable frozen meals, instant soups and sauces. Sound familiar? Because they're high in sugar, and high sugar diet will take a toll on your health by packing on unwanted pounds at a remarkably rapid rate. And it says, as noted in a BBC program, The Truth About Sugar, drinking 3 cups of tea or coffee per day with 2 teaspoons of sugar in each cup will lead to a 9.9 pound, almost 10 pound gain a year if you don't exercise to counterbalance that. And so, you know, because I read a lot, I'm constantly reading, because this is the way I do it. I happen to be able to use some of the reading on the podcast, but that's my way anyway, podcast or no podcast. I read a lot about health. Some of you may know I used to weigh 240 plus pounds. I stopped counting there. And I have since taken off 110 plus pounds and worked to keep it off. I've done lots and lots. So this is very close to my heart, and I've lived it, folks. I've lived it, and I am living it. And so that's why I want this for you. I want this for our kids. And so why do I harp on health and wellness when I'm an educator? Well, because I know that as our parents go, so go our kids, right? If our parents are eating poorly, chances are our kids are eating poorly. It is a rare household where parents eat poorly but save good, strong, non-processed foods for their kids. I mean, that's just, I've not seen that, frankly. It's all or nothing. Either the whole family eats well or the whole family eats poorly. And so for us to be able to retrain the adult brain so that it filters down to the kids is part of my work. Okay. And so here's another article, high blood sugar is no good for your brain. So we've known that high sugar is not good for the body, right? We've read about that, prediabetes, diabetes, all of that, and we'll read a little bit more about that. But here's, you know, just to tack on, when you hear about high blood sugar, what comes to mind? Diabetes risk, weight gain, and a risk to your heart health. But what about your brain? High blood sugar, even below diabetes level, may boost the risk of dementia. A new study from University College found that prediabetes, a condition where blood sugar levels are high but not as high as full-blown diabetes, may threaten brain health. And so this was research published in the Journal of Diabetes, Obesity, and Metabolism, looking at data on 500,000 people between the ages of 40 and 69. Researchers found that people with prediabetes had 42% higher risk of mental decline over 4 years than people with normal blood sugar. So, you know, that should be making us sort of wake up and pay attention, right? So let's continue reading just a little bit more, and then we're going to say, well, what can we do about it? What are some easy ways? Because I'm not just here about the problems, I'm here about the solutions too, right? So Long-term consumption of seed oil sets off obesity cascade. And so when you consume an abundance of ultra-processed food, it's not only a matter of taking in empty calories, or that eating too many calories can cause weight gain. Eating those foods actually triggers a catastrophic cascade of health declines rooted in the mitochondrial dysfunction and insulin resistance. Seed oils are a significant factor. At the root of the harmful biochemical reactions triggered by seed oils is linoleic acid. Linoleic acid accounts for about 80% of the fatty acids compositions of vegetable oil. Omega-6 fats must be balanced with omega-3 in order to not be harmful. But this isn't the case for most Americans. So mitochondria are the powerhouses of your cells and provides most of the chemical energy needed for your cell's biochemical reactions. When they malfunction, they can create reactive oxygen species, and these substances are highly reactive chemical molecules, also called free radicals, that wreak havoc in your body. These free radicals then feed back into the peroxidation cascades, which then these free radicals steal electrons from the lipids in cell membranes and start a chain reaction that damages the cell. And so what does that lead to? Well, frankly, that leads to a low immune system. It leads to inflammation in the body. So it says in our 2021 interview, obesity epidemic can be linked back to a Western diet rich in refined sugars and refined grains. Whenever sugar and white flour are added to a population's diet, regardless of what their baseline disease rate is, you eventually end up with an epidemic of obesity and diabetes. And so we've seen that. I've done podcasts where some of you may remember, this is going back a couple of years now, that it used to be diabetes was called adult onset. Type 2 was called adult onset. You had type 1, that was juvenile, and then you had type 2, which was adult onset. But then kids started getting type 2. And because kids started getting type 2, they had to remove the title of adult onset diabetes and then call it type 2 because of this type of diet. And so, unfortunately, and again, I've done that podcast of around, and I had experts on around type 2 diabetes, but it's a silent killer, sort of. It's the only way that you find it in kids anymore is through a doctor visit. A lot of times when a child is in for a checkup, the blood work will show that the child has type 2 or is pre-diabetic. And so because the child has not started feeling the symptoms and the havoc that's being caused by the sugar and inflammation in their body at that point. So what to do about it, right? What can we do about this, countering this statistic and this trend, right? Okay, let's talk about that. Well, simple ways to spend more time outside as a family. This author of this article talks about having a difficult child. They have a difficult child who, to put it mildly, is intense, opinionated, stubborn, and argumentative. She's spunky. Their parents love her, but she can be a problem until she hits outside. As soon as she's outside, she's light, she's carefree, she's still determined and competitive, but she's playful. And so, and some of you may have kids like that, where when they're cooped up in a classroom, they're cooped up at home, they've had to be cooped up doing virtual school. It brought out the worst in them. And then you took them outside and you noticed a huge difference. Well, that needs to be a regular part of a family's life. And why should we do this, right? Okay, let me talk about the why. Emotional benefits of time in nature. It builds confidence. And so in this case, when this author started taking her girls on hikes, the girls were struggling. They didn't want to do the hikes. They hadn't had the stamina built up to do the hikes. But then as they kept going, they gained confidence in their ability, they increased their stamina, and they have now embarked on longer and more challenging adventures. And so the girls themselves are more eager now to go on hikes and be outside with their family doing these kind of challenges. It promotes creativity and imagination. Nature play is unstructured and adventurous. It requires kids to be in tune with their senses and aware of their surroundings. And whether we're on a trail or a beach, exposure to the stillness and the starkness of nature promotes a unique sense of wonder for kids that no other environment offers. And I've seen that, when I go with my grandkids to the beach and you just give them a shovel and a pail, and then all of a sudden they're creating tassels and moats and holes, and they cover each other with sand, and they do all sorts of things that you just stand back and watch. And it's wonderful. It fosters connection. Many of the distractions from screens to toys are everywhere that are everywhere inside are removed from the environment outside. Time spent outside is for testing boundaries, creating shared memories, and drawing closer to one another so that when tough times come, and we're experiencing some of those now, we just come out, we're starting to come out of a tough COVID year, right? Then the children know that they can count on the family for support. Nature gives us time together, and it's the biggest reward of all. So again, these are simple ways. If you weren't a family that started going outside after dinner together during COVID, walk the dog for the first time after dinner all the time, after COVID and being cooped up and so forth, it's not too late, and it's very, very necessary, folks. I have, article after article after article about why it's important for not only kids, but adults. Adults, not only for your own self, because frankly, in my research over time to make sure I stay well, what I've learned is that I have to work at my health now for my health later. And so what I do now will tell me how sick of an adult I'll be in 10 or 20 years, or not that sick. Why would adults need to do that for their kids? You need to model. You need to model those expectations of good eating, of good sleeping, of stress coping, of exercise, all of those things. I know I've said it before, and sometimes people say, well, she's saying that again. Well, I'm not seeing changes yet, folks. I'm not seeing us as a society change enough as far as our approach to living healthy, so that I must continue my message, much like my message to all of you to be pub ed advocates, right? We want you to be advocates for yourself, your health, your kids, not only as a family, but also for other kids and their futures, because all of us are tied together in the end. We may not be able to be together much because of COVID, but all of our work, all of our being together and working together to get kids to graduate college, career, military ready is for our own benefit as adults and our future. So thank you for being on today. I hope that you left a little bit more educated in some of the good things happening in public education, some of the concerns that are happening in public education, and some of the politics, right? Although we don't, as I mentioned earlier, we don't take on the politics of what's happening in the schools. We take on the politics of what's happening outside the schools that impact the schools, right? But mostly I hope that you left with the understanding of how important all of this is and how we all have to work together to help these kids become better, higher tax-paying citizens. And again, if you need to ask questions, put them in the chat. If you need to ask me personal questions as far as things that are happening at your child's school, or as educators with educational questions, there's the email drbgood@askdrbegood.com. You can find that on my Facebook page, Ask Dr. Be Good Facebook page. But don't be silent. Don't suffer in silence. Ask questions. Ask questions so that you don't have to be part of the problem. You're part of the solution. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and get your vaccine if you haven't already.